Metta Sutta Karaniya Matta Kusalena Yantang Santang Pradang Abhisamecca. So
now we're going to start with questions and answers. Who'd like to start? I've got about 7 questions, but I always start first, so somebody else can start. Okay.
I'd just like to ask, as far as Buddhism is concerned, does it make any difference whether it is first or second or third as far as living Buddhism? You know, does the position of order, is it more just a historical issue, or are there other factors?
For living, these are not valid. For living, we just follow the practice. Put into practice these teachings. But what this is, as I mentioned, I'm not questioning about the doctrinal significance, but whatever is, when something comes to academics, it's a different perspective, I think. So we are dealing from that aspect, and I have tried to answer this. Some scholars, they have questioned whether actually this is a historical event. Did the Buddha give such a discourse, or can we agree? Or the contents, actually in contents there are many issues. It means it's much larger topic actually to discourse, whether it was given in a particular one discourse, or whether already this discourse refers to already established ideas, etc. So I think his question is whether this relate to living Buddhism. Or for living Buddhism, this has no significance. That's my answer.
Yeah, I had a question kind of that was really similar to that.
Also had to say. Okay. Well, no, this is not okay. I have to tell you, this is not concerned with your practice or our practice. This is sort of academic attempt. Okay.
Right, because previously Alex had given a speech on Lao Tzu, and the idea was, and there was a word that you used about it being not necessarily a real person. What was the word? A historical something? Do you know what I'm talking about?
Yeah, but okay. Did I use any word?
Yeah, there was a specific word. Like a real person as opposed to what may or may not have been an actual historical person. But I think my question was along the same lines, and you answered that. My question was, would it make a difference if the historicity of a specific teaching was found to be completely unclear? And I think what you're saying is no, because the meaning stays the same, and for living in Buddhism, it doesn't. So I think it's very interesting what you've done to try to look at all those different pieces. Did you have a question?
Oh, I was no. What I would like to say is thank you, Bante, for this speech. But first of all, you mentioned many traditions, right? And I'd just like to make a little bit clear the situation, because you mentioned Sarvastivada, Lakutaravada, and all these traditions. First of all, as long as I understand, you've been comparing Pali text with Ahanjing, especially with the Ahanjing, right? So this is Samyukta Agama, in Pali, Samyutta Nikaya, right? So you're just comparing them. These two texts, actually, you say that they belong to different traditions, and it's true and not totally, because Sarvastivada and tradition which you are belonging to, you call Theravada. Actually, Theravada, it's a term which was originally used for one of 2 main sects which appeared after the first serious split in Sangha, which was for not Madhyamika,
Sautrantika.
No, not Sautrantika. It was Theravadins. So it was old school in Sanskrit. It's called Sthaviravada, right? And another was Mahasangika. So it was the most of the monks actually went another way, but there was mostly young monks, right? And then Theravada split into 2 main traditions: Vibhajavadins and Sarvastivadins. And contemporaries, Theravada, which we belong to, and I just had a pleasure to be in Sri Lanka 1 month ago. It's just a part of the Vibhajyavadan tradition. There were 5 main sects, and so your argument that you can find statements supporting your thesis in Zahanji and in Pali Canon is very interesting, but it's also the fact that it proves not only that it's from another angle. It's not only proves that this was a historical fact. Actually, as you said, it's not very important if it was first or second in the context of practice. Of course, not in the context of arguing with Mahayana, for example, because it's very important. If there is an argument between Mahayana Buddhism and Theravada Buddhism about the first teaching, it's very important, because Mahayana tradition will be saying that the teaching of Huayan Sutra was the first one when the Buddha was teaching to the bodhisattvas, not to people. That's why they will call you Hinayana, right? So I think that is very interesting thing, what you are looking from this angle. So my question would be like, what really pushed you to check Chinese text? Because as long as I'm aware of, especially until the 20th century, especially 80s, right? Theravada tradition was not very keen on this, not only Mahayana text, but also on the so-called Hinayanese text in Chinese, right? What pushed you to make this comparison? Because I also am familiar with this problem, and comparing Chinese text, especially Ahanjin with Pali text. Taiwan also, I probably aware of the figure of Master Yinshun, which makes huge contribution to recognizing the validity and importance of Southern tradition in Chinese. So I would like to know what really pushed you to check these two traditions and try to compare them, how it will affect your further practice, and how you see this kind of comparative studies and also recognition of Chinese translations of so-called Hinayana texts. Sorry, I know it's not very nice. Nowadays it's Shanzoubu, right? So how you see that, and what pushed you, and how you see the future of this kind of comparative studies in Sri Lanka and Theravada tradition?
Okay. These comparative studies, if I consider, this is now much, you are already familiar with that. I think this is much helpful. Because in my understanding, when I did, as I mentioned, there is one discourse. So in this discourse, when I read the Pali, the reference to the first discourse and its contents is very few, very less. It's marginal. But when I check the Chinese version, I can find very similar to the first discourse. It means I can get better information than the Pali text, and I can confirm if somebody questions. Because some can argue these contents, there are some slight differences. Okay, in the first discourse it mentions like this, total, but if you check the that particular another discourse, Noble Search Discourse. In the Noble Search Discourse, Buddha did not mention the entire contents of his first discourse. He just referred to the UN. But when I go to the Chinese version, I feel, it's very, very nice. How to say, I don't know. So, but how I felt is still helpful to confirm certain doubtful facts. That was my understanding. Actually, I am much interested in this field to compare, maybe due to the influence of the current trend in Buddhist studies, but still I am not to that, because I am not researching entirely about the comparative studies, but I am researching another aspect. But in this case, because this was sort of discussion about what is the first teaching of the Buddha and second and third, so I was to give a talk about the first discourse. So I tried how to present my idea, but in which context. So what came into my mind, I went to the academic views about this discourse. Rhys Davids, you maybe know him, Rhys Davids and Richard Gombrich, So when I read about their ideas, there are some questioning about this traditional position. So to encounter these doubts, I try to read within my and within the Chinese tradition, apart from my tradition, how other people, other textual traditions record this event. That was not more than that.
No, just very simple. How do you see the future of for example, studying of Chinese Buddhism, especially like Agama Sutras in Sri Lanka or in Southern tradition?
In Southern tradition, actually, it's still very few, especially for Sri Lanka. I came here 10 years ago to Taiwan. At that time, in Sri Lanka, still there are no Sri Lankans to compare Chinese and Nikaya and Agama, because it's very difficult for us to read Chinese texts. It takes long time, maybe even 15-20 years. I'm not sure. So, but I find nowadays it's doing better than us. Some scholars from Taiwan who go to Sri Lanka and other countries to study Pali Buddhism, and actually they have much opportunity to compare these two traditions. Recently I got a book, it was written by a Taiwanese. He did his PhD in Queensland University. It is about mindfulness. It means he's discussing about, in Pali Buddhism, there is one meditation theory. We call Sukha Vipassana, means the pure Vipassana meditation. So he has researched one concept. In first part, he tried to understand whether this concept originally came from the Buddha, or the Buddha's time was this concept. And I found in his second part, he tried to compare with other Chinese sources, as I did, whether Ahanchi record this. He go beyond that. Even some other Mahayana texts also, I think he has tried. Okay, it's not so. However, he has tried other Mahayana, Agama texts, and he has found evidence. Oh, still this concept is available. So I think now this trend is growing. It's much better for us. Actually, once I heard even Richard Gombrich, he has said, okay, before they train, they gave scholarships to Sri Lankan students and trained them how to research about comparing. But he has mentioned, it is if we provide funds to Korean students or Japanese or Chinese or Taiwanese, it's much easier because they know Chinese. Because these are the two, as I mentioned at the beginning of my talk, these Pali and Chinese is the now available two textual traditions.
For early Buddhism.
For early Buddhism, yeah. So it is easy to, okay, if Taiwanese knows Pali well, and for him it's very easy to compare Chinese, because Chinese, reading classical Ahanching is much difficult than the day-to-day life Chinese maybe. So they have that future.
Okay, other questions?
You?
All right. Okay, well, let's start. Sri Lanka is considered a Buddhist country. Is that true?
Yeah, we are a Buddhist country, but in Sri Lanka is actually a multi-religious country.
Hindu, Muslim,
Christian, Islam, and Buddhist.
Okay. When did, at some point in the past, thousands and thousands of years ago, did Sri Lanka exist, or was it just part of India, or there were different?
Sri Lanka should have been existing. Okay, it is not here, but in the legends or some legends, yeah, some historical they are not textually supported, but it goes back to the in India there are two epics. One is Ramayana, one is Mahabharata. So in Ramayana there is a event, the king called Rama, he went to Sri Lanka to save his wife, because Sri Lankan king had some problem with that Indian king. So from that date, normally we also believe that king was maybe nearly 3,000 years ago, even before the Buddha, 1,000. So 3,000 years ago, Sri Lanka still was an independent country. However, within the Buddha's, after the Buddha's time, it means 5th century AD, BC, up to today, Sri Lanka is an independent country. It is not part of India. Okay, there are cultural similarities and the influence of the language and everything, but Sri Lanka politically is still an independent country.
Yeah, I guess I wasn't trying to sound unbelievably naive, but my point, the reason I was asking that to sort of set that up was my next question. What kinds of things were going on in sectarian things or otherwise? What kinds of things were going on in Sri Lanka and India during the time of the writing of the Pali Canon? I mean, there were multiple kings. There were what was the politics? What was going on?
Actual political side I cannot explain because I'm not studying about that political background.
Or just the history. What do they teach about the history?
First, Buddha's teaching came as an oral tradition. They maintain as oral text, and according to the Sri Lankan chronicles, in the 1st century AD, it means maybe AD 30. During one king, these texts were put into writing, Pali Canon put into. But actually, in that case, behind there is this is an informal discussion. Huh? So there is a story. Before the texts were written down in Sri Lanka, some epidemic or some contagious disease totally spread throughout Sri Lanka. So the many monks were dead due to this disease. So then monks found out this is a big threat to continue the text. So according to the chronicle explanation, so monks decided later, these people believe this maybe continue for 30 years or around. So then they decided we have to write down this to save these teachings of the Buddha. So they did so. It is whether it is politically influenced or not is not clear actually.
That actually answers my question. That's kind of what I wanted to know. Other questions? Okay, I'll go for another one then. So earlier you said that you didn't really want to get into talking about suffering, that kind of thing. But I'm still curious. What does it mean to you? Because I've heard people both try to externalize suffering and internalize it. Or both. So what does it mean to you? I mean, like, I have a friend who's not Buddhist, but he would say that all people are feeling pain all the time, and that's his idea. And I think that's sort of that may be an internalization because he feels like he feels pain, and he says, no, maybe it's also an externalization because he sees other people feel pain, so it's that kind of thing. But I believe it's more than that. Can you talk about that for a while?
Suffering, okay, that is basic and fundamental teaching of the Buddha, according to Theravada tradition. Here suffering includes, we are not dividing your suffering or my suffering, but we accept everybody within the conditional experience, everyone is subject to suffering. So it is not your suffering is not different from mine, and my suffering is not different from yours. Maybe the different experience, or the part of the body, or the aspect of the mind, it may be different, but the suffering is going on. Okay, this is we believe the Buddha says existentially, sentient beings based on suffering. He said in Pali text, the world is based on suffering. So fundamental issue we recognize is suffering. So it may be psychological or maybe physiological, but it goes on, and even that actually finally more than pain or headache or these things are actually minor issues. But finally you know the word in Pali language we use dukkha, you know very well. So this term, some people actually maybe suffering is maybe very superficial translation. It goes more deeper psychological level. Okay, actually for the Prince Siddhartha, once he left, he's a prince. He had nothing to worry about physically or economically or nothing, but he was looking for more than that. It's much a psychological issue finally we face, I think.
Do you think there's a better word for that in English? Sorry, I just interrupted
Normally
you.
people translate unsatisfactoriness. Okay?
I'd like to come in on this just in a different angle. And I guess you could maybe tell how some of this fits into Buddhism. One, in a somewhat whimsical manner, Sartre says, you know, hell is other people. And on a different angle, can you have growth without suffering?
Can I listen again to his question?
It's just your main question is personal growth possible without suffering?
Right, and or even, I guess, yeah, growth if you want to be towards enlightenment or towards being yourself, or, you know, whatever way. I don't mean physical. I guess you could also include physical growth, but I mean more personal growth. Can you have it without suffering?
Oh. Suffering is it is unavoidable experience, but if it is the starting point to the spiritual growth. We accept, because without a reason we no need to look for higher level. I can be satisfied with what I have, but starting point according to Buddhism is having suffering. So, but suffering is the way, as you say, I think the point. So suffering helps to think higher attainment. So, but the cause of eradicating suffering is always, if you examine the the meditative states, etc., all full of happiness. That is the growth, and starting point we find is suffering, because without this cause, there's no need to look for other cause for me.
Okay, yeah. I see two things here, and I don't want to sound too simplistic, but in one sense there's what we traditionally say, like no pain, no gain. But the other standpoint, which you mentioned there, that if you don't have, which I think is probably a different kind of suffering, you don't have any reason to go beyond it, or to seek a higher level. If you don't feel, or if you feel you're at, whether naively or not, if you're feel you're at where it's at, nirvana or whatever you would call it, you don't have a reason to go. So I don't know. I'm probably using pain or suffering in two different ways here, but
pain and suffering.
Yeah, I would like to add something. I think that one thing you should be has basically two meanings. One, it can be translated as a suffering, like as you pain. You mentioned that the normal suffering, which are simply in pain, physical, mental, some kind of pain. But when there are in Buddhism, you have three kind of sensation. It's pleasant sensation, it's unpleasant sensation, and it's no pleasant either, unpleasant sensation, not neutral, right? But all of them are called dukkha. All of them are called dukkha. But so then the translation usually is suffering. But there is amazing scholar. I probably know Sue Hamilton. And she wrote an amazing book about the eye of beholder, the interpretation of early Buddhism. And she said that we can this word dukkha translate as a suffering. She translated, as you mentioned, as unsatisfactoriness, yes. Which means that even the pleasant dukkha is something deeper. It's not just a simple pain and unpleasant feeling. Even the super hyper pleasant feeling, it will be dukkha. Why? Because you always want more. And as long as you want more, because traditional explanation is different. Traditional explanation is that why pleasant feeling is dukkha, because pleasant feeling in the end will turn into unpleasant because you will lose it in the end. But then she has the question, very simple, but at the moment when I feel it, it's not unpleasant, it's just so pleasant, right? But it's still dukkha. Why it's still dukkha? Because you always want more. As more pleasant it is more you want, right? So then the point is, dukkha actually is much better if it's translated as unsatisfactoriness or unsatisfactory, because every sensation is never, it will never give you full satisfaction. That's why the Buddha is saying that the word is dukkha. It's not just a suffering, because you can, like, this is the question why Siddhartha Gautama left his palace, right? He left a very pleasant life, but he still was. This you mentioned Sartre is just existential, this what is it called in English? Existential anxiety, right? That you can't just see it. Even everything is great, but you just still have this question. You're never fully satisfied. So this is very problematic term, dukkha,
Yeah.
It's very problematic text, and some words in all religions translated into English, they just lose the original meaning. So this is what I would like to add, and I think it will be much easier to understand some controversies.
Okay, more questions? I have another one. I know there have been violent Hindu sects, but have there been violent Buddhist sects?
Buddhist sects.
Like Buddhist groups? Have there been violent Buddhist groups?
In my understanding, still not.
No. So they were. So say, let's say there were. I have a friend who's Sufi. Sufi? Is he Sufi? I can't remember.
Okay.
I can't remember.
Sufi is a Muslim.
Okay, no, sorry, not Sufi. Okay, anyway, I have a friend who lived in India, and he always talked about how he didn't like the Hindus because they were constantly warring with the other groups, other religious groups in India. So was there historically a lot of persecution of Buddhists in India and Sri Lanka?
Buddhist?
Did the Hindus ever go to war with the Buddhists and just
No, never.
No.
In my understanding, okay.
So
I'm not historically studying those facts, but as far as Hindu has not persecuted, and because within Hindu, I don't know what happened, but normally Hindu is, in my understanding, Indian religion and Chinese religion, they are much tolerant, and there are arguments that is at intellectual level, but not physical level. No. Within the Buddhist, up to date, there's no. Okay, there are disagreements about the interpretations, but not physical encounter. Hindus, I don't know, because I don't belong to Hindu tradition and what is exactly, but in my general picture is still much tolerant and much ahimsa.
Okay, other questions?
Yeah. Correct me if I'm wrong, but does mindfulness, okay, this is question one, does mindfulness mean staying in the present moment? And to stop wanting all the time, which is the egoic mind or whatever, the desire always for fulfillment, and then you get the fulfillment and you still want more, like he was saying. You're supposed to, I think, stay in the present moment, and as long as you're in the present moment and always present, then you will get rid of the suffering. But to achieve that, one way is meditation, so that you're meditating so that you can become always in the present moment. But I find meditation I don't like it. So I wonder if there's another doorway into the present moment that you know of besides meditation.
beside meditation.
Yeah, if you don't want to meditate, is there another way?
Okay, if we remove this word meditation, but okay, meditation also, as he said, I don't know where from they took that word. Like meditation in the philosophy, there is one philosopher. Yeah, but living in present means, okay, it does not, okay, one thing, just focusing, whatever we divide into few sections. One is our physical body, then we consider our feelings and what thoughts come into our minds. Okay, so just okay, when actually this is the point. Maybe you don't need to go to deeper meditations, but still this requires to build some determination to observe our psychophysical experiences.
Like mindfulness.
Yeah, we can call it mindfulness, at the same time just being aware of what is going within my body. Okay, because these techniques, these are techniques actually. Actually, these techniques perhaps for some people work, for some people they doesn't work. It is obvious, and even the Buddha accepts that, and the tradition accepts that. So for you, because you know the one famous, there are two famous meditation techniques in Sri Lanka. One is breathing, observe here, and the other is compassion. But these are okay. These are popular meditation. But you know this one is very tough. So for such people, they can follow. One thing is like cultivating compassion is one technique to build up mindfulness. In that case, you are not going to examine what is going on your body, but you feel love and friendliness for yourself and for all the universe. That is one technique. So other than that, when you, this is, you have to, my way is, we have to determine whatever, first maybe it feels difficult, but you know this is, the meditation is a habituation. It takes time. It does not, today I start, tomorrow I become a master of meditation. It's impossible, because we are not used to it. So no need to worry about that. Just if you, okay, you select one aspect, maybe for you select your feelings, okay, just observe, don't go to judge. No need to judge actually. When we feel pain, okay, I know that, but this does not make any difference to you, but you have to continue and you have to wait, maybe several years, perhaps your lifetime, I don't know. So then you can see within yourself, there is a development in your awareness. However, if you want to be live in present and mindful, still we have to find some, okay, for concept, meditating on God or love or breathing or whatever. We have to find some object or your internal experiences. You have to establish, because in Buddhism, this we use the word sati. Sati is one is indriya. We use the word indriya. Indriya means faculty. Actually, there's in the body there's no faculty, but this is a sort of capability we can develop. We have to develop. So it takes it requires our dedication to that. So, but it is still, I believe it's a worthwhile attempt, because it will give benefits that we don't know today. Yeah. So what we like or we don't like does not decide what is truth or not. But if there is benefits, okay, still we have to try. But you know, I cannot refer to Santideva, is a famous Buddhist philosopher from Mahayana. He said, once you practice, you may fall down 1,000 times, but don't worry about that. It's natural. but you don't give up your purpose. It means to become mindful, or because in scientifically now they say whatever activity we do, it creates some space or some new neuron system in our brain. So if we play billiard, according to that, there is some development. If we try to blame people continuously, for that also there is a place. So scientifically now, very interesting, you can go to the internet and how they talk about mindfulness and their experiments and how these practices influence your entire well-being. Yeah, I think it's still worthwhile to try. Don't worry, and failure is normal. We have to fail, then we can go ahead.
We have about 5 more minutes, so anyone else like to ask questions?
Yes, I do. I know 6 words about home, ma, mi, pa, mi, home. I don't know what's the meaning about that. Could you try to explain?
Because I'm not from that tradition, so I don't know. Om mani padme hum, I don't know. It is Tibetan.
Okay, so it's different, different kind of. Oh, okay.
But maybe it tells something like may all being happy or something like, I don't know. I don't know actually.
Okay, thank you.
More questions?
Is it according to the Buddha saying, is it true that if we have more understanding about the concept of the emptiness, it will helpful to reduce our suffering? Is it? And how does it work?
Okay. I'm from Theravada tradition. Actually, this concept, emptiness, is a big concept. It belongs to Mahayana tradition. But however, I can give my explanation is, okay, early Buddhism we told Wu, Wu, Anat, or no self, non-self. It indicates briefly there's no substance, any substance apart from psychophysical experience in this our life or our being. Only mind and body, and their mutual interactions. Apart from there's no any substance. So this doctrine, when it put into Mahayana tradition, they said everything is conditional. This is called emptiness. Emptiness does not mean something empty, but when examine the things, they are conditionally existing. They don't have independent existence. That is called emptiness. So it breaks our subjective understanding as some solid substance or some existing ego or something like that.
Sorry.
Is it okay?
Okay, well, let me just, the last question, unless anyone else would like to ask a question. Last question. No? Okay. You're Alex's classmate, right?
Yeah,
not
say, but he's my senior.
Schoolmate.
Yes.
Schoolmate.
Yes. And department man too.
Right. You're studying philosophy, but not the same philosophy as Alex. You're studying the philosophy of Buddhism. Is that right?
Yeah.
I talked to Alex about it, but I want to ask you, what made you want to study philosophy? What made you want to join that university and study that?
Okay, that's
too much of a personal question,
big reasons, then. But actually, I have to tell one thing. Okay, my teachers in Sri Lanka, maybe that gentleman may be knowing Kalupahana, DJ Kalupahana, Premasiri. Premasiri is actually my supervisor in my master thesis, and they all came from Western background. It means they all have studied Western philosophy, and they try to, within the Western context, to interpret Buddhism. Because Western thinking or Western academia is now dominant in the world. So, and they also, actually at that time Sri Lanka was the the student went to maybe UK or USA and they studied their philosophy and they explained Buddhism. So actually that influenced me unconsciously to join the philosophy department. And because when I read their books, I always find some philosophical terms. So I find, oh, maybe I should know these things. So it also was one reason to join.
Okay, well, thank you. That's very cool.
Thank you.
Kamisu vineya gedang nahi jatu gabbaseyang punareti ti